The ache was a familiar tenant in Alara's chest, a resident of 2 years, 4 months, and 11 days. It paid its rent in sleepless nights and conversations that felt like swallowing glass. Tonight, it was particularly active, stirring behind her ribs as Chloe's voice, usually a balm, became a series of gentle, unwitting wounds. "He just doesn't listen," Chloe said, her fingers tracing the condensation on her glass of water. They were curled on opposite ends of their worn, gray sofa, a battlefield of throw pillows between them. The lamp in the corner cast a soft, golden glow, making Chloe's hair look like spun honey. "It's like I'm speaking a different language. I'll talk about my day, about something that really mattered to me at the gallery, and I can just see his eyes glazing over. He's waiting for his turn to talk about work, or the game, or what his friends are doing this weekend." Alara nodded, a practiced, supportive motion. She made a soft, sympathetic sound in her throat. Inside, the ache sharpened. Every complaint Chloe had about Liam was a secret, treacherous hope blooming in the dark garden of Alara's heart. Each flaw she pointed out was a reason he was wrong for her, a reason that Alara, who listened with her entire being, might be right. It was a horrible, selfish thought, and she hated herself for it. "You deserve to be heard," Alara said, and her voice was steady, a betrayal of the hurricane inside her. It was the right thing to say. It was what a good friend would say. For 2 years, 4 months, and 11 days, Alara had been the very best friend she could be. She had been the one to help Chloe pick out an anniversary gift for Liam last year. She had been the one to talk Chloe down from a panic attack before meeting his parents. She had been the one who sat right here, in this exact spot, and listened for hours as Chloe dissected every text message, every argument, every moment of doubt. Alara had become an expert cartographer of their failing relationship, mapping its fault lines and seismic vulnerabilities while her own heart quietly broke. "I know," Chloe sighed, and the sound was so full of exhaustion it seemed to physically weigh her down. She sank deeper into the cushions. "But it feels like so much work." "A relationship shouldn't feel like a chore, should it, Elle?" "No," Alara thought. "It should feel like this. Like sitting in comfortable silence. Like knowing the other person's coffee order by heart. Like the easy way your shoulders brush when you reach for the same book. It should feel like home." "No, it shouldn't," she said instead. Chloe looked at her then, her blue-gray eyes, the color of a storm-tossed sea, searching Alara's face. For a terrifying second, Alara felt seen. Not as the supportive friend, but as herself, a woman drowning in unspoken feelings. She feared Chloe could see the truth written in the lines around her eyes, in the tense set of her jaw. But the moment passed. Chloe's gaze softened into its usual familiar affection. "You're the best, Alara. Honestly. I don't know what I'd do without you." The words were meant as a comfort, a lifeline. They felt like a cage. They defined the precise, unmovable boundaries of their world. "I am your friend. I am the one you come to when your real life, your romantic life, falls short." Alara was the safe harbor, never the destination. The ache twisted, a knife turning slowly. She offered a small, brittle smile. Later that night, the apartment grew cold. A sudden autumn chill had seeped through the old window frames, a stark reminder that the seasons were changing, even if nothing in her life ever did. Alara was in her room, trying to read, but the words were just black marks on a page. Her mind was still on the sofa, replaying Chloe's words, her tired sigh, the look in her eyes. A soft knock on her door made her jump. "Elle? Come in," she called, her heart giving a nervous flutter. Chloe pushed the door open, a silhouette against the hallway light. She was hugging herself, shivering slightly in her thin pajama shorts and tank top. "It's freezing in here. Liam took the big duvet back to his place last week, and I keep forgetting to get it." "I've got an extra blanket," Alara offered, already moving to get up. "No, it's okay," Chloe said, her voice small. She hesitated in the doorway, a picture of uncertainty. It was a look Alara wasn't used to seeing on her usually confident friend. "This is going to sound weird, but can I borrow a hoodie? One of yours?" Alara blinked. It was such a simple request, yet it felt monumental. It was an act of casual intimacy they hadn't really shared before. Sharing blankets during movie nights was one thing. Wearing each other's clothes felt different. More personal. Of course, Alara said, her voice a little too tight. She went to her closet, her hands slightly trembling as she sifted through the hangers. She tried to choose one at random, to not infuse the action with any meaning. But her fingers brushed against her favorite one, a soft, oversized gray hoodie, worn and comfortable. It was the one she lived in on weekends, the one that smelled perpetually of her laundry detergent and the faint, sweet scent of her vanilla and lavender perfume. She pulled it out. "This one's the warmest." "Thanks," Chloe said, taking it from her. Their fingers brushed for a fraction of a second, and a jolt, sharp and startling, shot up Alara's arm. She pulled her hand back as if burned. Chloe didn't seem to notice. She pulled the hoodie over her head, her blonde hair momentarily mussed before she shook it out. The garment swamped her, the sleeves falling down over her hands. She looked small and vulnerable and impossibly lovely standing in the soft light of Alara's bedroom. Chloe burrowed her face into the collar, inhaling deeply. She closed her eyes. A quiet moment passed. Then another. When she opened her eyes, she looked directly at Alara. Her expression was unreadable, a strange mix of discovery and contentment. "It smells like you," Chloe whispered, the words barely disturbing the air between them. Alara's breath hitched. Her entire world seemed to tilt on its axis. Chloe offered a small, shy smile. "I like that." And then she was gone, pulling the door softly shut behind her, leaving Alara standing in the middle of her room with a heart that was no longer aching, but hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird beating its wings against a cage. The carefully constructed walls of her composure, built over 2 long years, crumbled into dust. The hoodie became a fixture. Chloe wore it the next morning while they made coffee, the long sleeves pushed up to her elbows. She wore it that evening while they watched a movie, curled up not on her end of the sofa, but right next to Alara, their knees touching. Alara could feel the warmth of Chloe's leg through her own jeans, a steady, radiating heat that seemed to burn a brand onto her skin. She didn't move away. She couldn't. Every time Alara saw the soft gray fabric, every time she caught a whiff of her own scent mingled with Chloe's, a dizzying combination of hope and terror churned in her stomach. It felt like a dare. It felt like a promise. It felt like a countdown to a disaster she couldn't prevent. Their late-night talks shifted. They became less about Liam's specific failings and more about abstract concepts. Love. Connection. Fulfillment. "Do you think there's one person for everyone?" Chloe asked one night, her voice hushed in the dark. She was tracing idle patterns on the back of Alara's hand, a gesture that had started casually and had now become a common occurrence. Her touch was featherlight, but it sent shivers across Alara's entire body. Alara struggled to form a coherent thought. How could she answer that when her one person was sitting right beside her, tracing circles on her skin, completely unaware of the cataclysm she was causing? "I don't know about one person," Alara managed, her voice thick. "But I think there are people who just fit. People who make sense with you. Where it doesn't feel like you're constantly trying to solve a puzzle. The pieces just click." Chloe went still. Her fingers stopped moving. "The pieces don't click with Liam," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "It feels like I'm trying to force them together. Like I'm pretending to be a shape I'm not, just to make it work." She turned her head, her face now inches from Alara's in the dim light. "Have you ever felt that? Like you were playing a role?" The irony was a physical blow. Alara had been playing a role for years. The role of the platonic best friend. "Yes," she admitted softly. "I have." Chloe's gaze dropped. It fell from Alara's eyes to her mouth, and it lingered there for 1, 2, 3 agonizing heartbeats. Alara's breath caught in her throat. The air between them grew thick, charged with unspoken electricity. It was the longest, most terrifying 3 seconds of Alara's life. She could feel the universe holding its breath, waiting for a line to be crossed. Then, just as quickly, Chloe's eyes flicked back up, a flicker of something: confusion, fear, in their depths. She pulled her hand away and shifted back, creating a small but significant space between them. The connection was broken. The moment was lost. "I should probably get to bed," Chloe said, her voice suddenly strained. "Big day tomorrow." Alara could only nod, her throat too tight to speak. She watched Chloe retreat to her room, the gray hoodie a phantom shape in the darkness. She was left alone on the sofa, with the ghost of Chloe's touch on her hand and the distinct, earth-shattering feeling that something had fundamentally, irrevocably changed. The question was no longer if the dam would break, but when. And she was terrified of the flood that would follow. Physical contact became their new, unspoken language. It was a dialect of lingering touches and accidental brushes that felt anything but accidental. Chloe's hand would find Alara's arm when she laughed at a joke. Her shoulder would press against Alara's for the entire duration of a car ride. One afternoon, while Alara was reading on the couch, Chloe came and sat on the floor, leaning her head back against Alara's knees, her blonde hair spilling over Alara's lap. Alara's fingers twitched with the desperate, overwhelming urge to run them through it, to feel the silk of it. She curled her hands into fists, her knuckles white, and continued to stare blankly at the page, reading the same sentence over and over again. Alara started feeling like a ghost in her own life, haunting the edges of a story that was unfolding without her consent. She was a silent observer to her own heart's potential destruction. The hope was the worst part. It was a cruel, insidious weed, growing stronger with every shared glance, every soft touch. It whispered to her in the dead of night that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't imagining things. That the way Chloe looked at her now was different. Softer. More vulnerable. More longing. It was a hope that felt dangerously like a cliff's edge. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. It was raining, a relentless, miserable downpour that matched the mood inside Alara's soul. She was making tea, trying to will away the tension headache building behind her eyes, when the front door opened and closed. Chloe stood in the entryway, dripping wet, her face pale and her eyes wide and red-rimmed. She wasn't wearing the hoodie. She was wearing the clothes she'd left in that morning, but they looked disheveled, wrong. "Chloe?" Alara asked, her heart lurching. "What's wrong? What happened?" Chloe just shook her head, a single tear tracing a path through the raindrops on her cheek. She walked forward, her steps unsteady, and when she reached Alara, she collapsed into her arms, burying her face in Alara's shoulder and sobbing. They were not the quiet, tired tears Alara was used to. They were wrenching, gutting sobs that shook her entire frame. Alara's arms came up automatically, holding her tight. She didn't ask any more questions. She just stood in the middle of their kitchen, holding her best friend, her everything, while she fell apart. She stroked Chloe's wet hair, murmuring soft, meaningless reassurances, feeling the damp chill of her clothes seep into her own shirt. After what felt like an eternity, the sobs subsided into shaky breaths. Chloe pulled back, though she didn't let go, her hands clutching the fabric of Alara's t-shirt. "I did it," Chloe whispered, her voice raw. "I ended it. With Liam." The world stopped. The rain hammering against the window, the kettle beginning to whistle, Alara's own frantic heartbeat, it all faded into a dull hum. Liam was gone. The obstacle, the reason, the safe and solid barrier between friendship and something more, was gone. A terrifying, exhilarating emptiness opened up in front of them. "Oh, Chloe," Alara breathed, her own eyes filling with tears, for Chloe's pain and for the terrifying, guilty relief that flooded her. For the next 2 days, they lived in a strange, intimate bubble. Chloe slept in Alara's bed, not because she asked, but because after she'd fallen asleep on the sofa that first night, Alara couldn't bear to wake her, instead covering her with a blanket and sleeping on the armchair herself. The next night, Chloe had simply followed her into her room, crawling under the covers without a word, curling up with her back to Alara. They didn't touch, but Alara could feel the heat radiating from her body, could hear every soft breath she took. It was an intimacy so profound it was almost unbearable. On the third evening, the fragile peace shattered. They were sitting on the sofa again, the silence stretching between them, no longer comfortable, but thick with everything left unsaid. Chloe turned to her, her face serious, the last traces of tears gone, replaced by a raw, searching intensity. "We need to talk, Alara," she said, her voice quiet but firm. Alara's stomach plummeted. "Okay. These last few days, this last month really," Chloe started, her hands twisting in her lap. "Something's been happening. Between us. It's not just me, is it?" "I'm not crazy," it wasn't a question, it was a plea for confirmation. Alara couldn't speak. She could only shake her head, a tiny, jerky movement. "No, you're not crazy." Chloe took a shaky breath. "When I was with Liam, especially near the end, all I could think about was this. Being here. With you. It felt more real, more right, than anything I had with him. And that scared me. It still scares me." She looked up, her gaze piercing. "I feel safe with you. I feel seen. In a way I've never felt with anyone before." Every word was a validation of Alara's secret hopes, and with each one, the terror grew. This was it. The point of no return. "I think." Chloe's voice dropped to a whisper, and she leaned closer, her eyes scanning Alara's face, as if searching for an answer she already knew. "I think I might not be as straight as I always thought I was." The confession hung in the air between them, fragile and monumental. "And I think," she continued, her gaze dropping to Alara's lips, just as it had before, but this time it stayed there, resolute. "I've been wanting to kiss you for weeks." Time fractured. The seconds stretched into an eternity, each one filled with the sound of Alara's blood rushing in her ears. Chloe's words echoed in the sudden, ringing silence. "I've been wanting to kiss you for weeks." It was impossible. It was everything. It was a key turning in a lock that Alara had long since believed was rusted shut. The hope that she had tried so desperately to suppress, to starve, to kill, erupted inside her. It was a wild, brilliant, terrifying thing, a supernova in the quiet darkness of her heart. It burned away the years of patient waiting, the carefully constructed walls of friendship, the practiced, steady facade. All that was left was the raw, trembling truth. A tear she hadn't realized she was holding back slipped down her cheek. Chloe's expression softened, a wave of concern washing over her features. She raised a hesitant hand, her fingers gently brushing the tear away. The touch was electric, a lightning strike that grounded Alara back in the moment. "Elle?" Chloe whispered, her voice laced with anxiety. "Say something. Please." Alara opened her mouth, but what came out was a strangled sob, a sound that was half pain and half overwhelming relief. "Weeks," she finally managed to choke out, the words sounding foreign, absurd. "Chloe, weeks." The full weight of her own hidden love, the sheer mass of it, pressed down on her. It was not a thing of weeks. It was an epic, a saga written in quiet moments and longing glances, a library of unsaid things. For me, Alara took a shuddering breath, forcing herself to meet Chloe's wide, searching eyes. The fear was still there, a cold knot of dread in her stomach, but the hope was stronger. It demanded to be spoken. For me, it's been 2 years. 4 months. And 16 days. The numbers fell into the space between them, heavy and irrefutable. She saw the confession land in Chloe's eyes. She saw the flicker of confusion, then the dawning, staggering comprehension. The way her lips parted in a silent "oh." The realization of what all those late-night talks, all those supportive nods, all those moments of quiet companionship had truly meant. What they had cost Alara. "Oh, Elle," Chloe breathed, her own eyes shimmering with tears now. "All this time, you felt that? And you just sat with me. You listened to me talk about him." Her voice broke on the last word, thick with a new kind of pain, a retroactive guilt. "I didn't want to lose you," Alara whispered, the truth finally uncaged. "Losing you is so much scarier than this." "This isn't scary," Chloe said, her voice fierce with sudden certainty. She moved closer, closing the last few inches that separated them on the sofa. Her hand, which had dropped from Alara's cheek, found her hand, their fingers intertwining in a way that felt both brand new and anciently familiar. Not anymore. The scariest part was not understanding it. Not saying it. She brought their joined hands up, pressing Alara's knuckles to her lips. She closed her eyes. "You are the kindest, most patient person I have ever known," she murmured against Alara's skin. Then she opened her eyes, and all the confusion was gone. All that remained was a clear, unwavering light. "Can I?" she asked, her voice trembling just slightly. "Can I kiss you, Alara?" Alara's world narrowed to the space of a single breath. To Chloe's face, illuminated by the lamplight. To the question that held her entire future. She couldn't find her voice, so she just nodded, a single, decisive dip of her chin. "Yes." Chloe leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. But Alara was anchored, incapable of moving anywhere but forward. The first touch was impossibly soft, a tentative, questioning brush of lips against lips. It was a whisper of a kiss, full of hesitation and years of unspoken reverence. It tasted of salt from their tears and the sweet, dizzying promise of relief. Then Alara made a small sound in the back of her throat, a sigh of surrender, and the tentative pressure deepened. Chloe's other hand came up to cup her jaw, her thumb stroking her cheek. It was no longer a question. It was an answer. A homecoming. The kiss became more certain, a beautiful, blooming warmth that spread from Alara's mouth through her entire body, chasing out the last of the cold, lonely ache. It was a kiss of profound gratitude, of staggering relief, of a love that had finally found its voice. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathless. They didn't go far. Their foreheads rested together, their eyes closed, their shared breath warm in the small space between them. "Oh," Chloe breathed out, the word a perfect, reverent sigh. "Wow," Alara whispered back, her voice shaky but whole. The knife in her chest was gone. The ache had vanished. In its place was a feeling so warm and full and right that it brought fresh tears to her eyes. This time, they were tears of pure, unadulterated joy. "I'm terrified," Chloe admitted a few minutes later, her voice a murmur against Alara's hair. They hadn't moved from their cocoon on the sofa, Alara's head now resting on Chloe's shoulder, Chloe's arm wrapped securely around her. The gray hoodie, which Chloe had put back on at some point, felt like a shield. "Me too," Alara confessed, her voice muffled by the soft fabric. It was true. The initial euphoria was beginning to subside, leaving behind the daunting reality of what had just happened. They had crossed a line, a monumental one, and there was no going back. The landscape of their lives had been permanently altered. "What does this even mean?" Chloe asked the question that was hanging in the air. What do we do now?" Alara tilted her head back to look at her. The sincerity and fear in Chloe's eyes gave her a surge of courage. "I don't know," she said honestly. "But for the first time, it feels like we get to figure it out together." A small, watery smile touched Chloe's lips. "Together." I like the sound of that. She was quiet for a moment, her gaze distant as she processed the last few years through this new lens. A look of sudden, sharp clarity dawned on her face. "Oh my God," she said, her voice full of wonder. "That's what it was." "What was?" Alara asked. "All those times," Chloe explained, her eyes finding Alara's again, "all those times I felt like something was missing with Liam. Every time he didn't listen, or I felt like I couldn't be myself, or it just felt hollow. I was measuring him against you. I didn't even know I was doing it, but I was. I was measuring every relationship I've ever had against what I had with you, and they all came up short." The realization was a gift. It reframed Chloe's past not as a series of mistakes, but as a journey that, however unconsciously, was always leading her here. It absolved Alara of the guilt of wanting her friend's relationship to fail. It had been failing on its own terms, under the weight of a comparison it could never win. "We take it one day at a time," Alara said, her voice gaining strength, certainty. She reached up and cupped Chloe's cheek, mirroring the gesture Chloe had made just before their kiss. We try this." Chloe leaned into her touch, her eyes fluttering shut. "Okay," she whispered. One day at a time, she opened her eyes again, a soft, hopeful light shining in them. "Starting tomorrow. But tonight, can you just hold me?" "For as long as you want," Alara promised, and as she settled back against Chloe, she felt the final piece of her world click securely into place. 3 weeks later, Alara woke to the smell of coffee and the soft morning light filtering through her bedroom window. She wasn't alone. Chloe was humming softly to herself, moving around the room, dressed in her own pajamas, but with Alara's gray hoodie layered over top. It was no longer just Alara's hoodie. It had become theirs. Alara watched her for a moment, a slow, happy smile spreading across her face. The terror was gone, replaced by a steady, quiet rhythm that felt more natural than anything she had ever known. The awkwardness she had feared never materialized. Instead, their years of friendship provided the strongest possible foundation for something new. They already knew how to live together, how to comfort each other, how to make each other laugh. The only difference was that now they could kiss. They could hold hands in the grocery store. They could fall asleep wrapped in each other's arms and wake up like this. Chloe turned, a mug in each hand, and her face broke into a radiant smile when she saw Alara was awake. "Morning, sleepyhead. I brought you coffee." "You're the best," Alara said, pushing herself up against the pillows. Chloe walked over and handed her a mug before leaning down to press a soft, lingering kiss to her lips. It tasted of coffee and Chloe and a future Alara had never been brave enough to imagine. "No," Chloe murmured against her mouth. "You are." She sat on the edge of the bed, and they drank their coffee in a comfortable, easy silence, their knees touching. The world outside could be as complicated as it wanted. Liam had texted a few times, confused and hurt, and Chloe had handled it with a quiet grace that made Alara's heart swell. They knew there were other conversations to be had, other people to tell, a whole life to navigate. But in here, in the quiet sanctuary of their shared mornings, none of that mattered. Alara looked at Chloe, at the way the sunlight caught the blonde strands of her hair, at the familiar gray fabric of the hoodie, at the deep, unwavering affection in her eyes. The ache that had been her constant companion for so long felt like a distant memory, a ghost from another lifetime. She finally understood that home wasn't a place, or a sofa, or a shared apartment. Home was a feeling. It was the easy silence after a long day, the perfect cup of coffee in the morning, the warmth of a hand in hers. It was the scent of vanilla and lavender, wrapped up in the arms of the person who had been right there, waiting to be seen, all along.